Welcome everybody to the August meeting of the Town of Newbury Human Resources Board. It is 4:01. We are in session, and with us today are
Diane Doyle,
Mark Gleckman,
John Ferrara,
Anthony Antico.
thank you all. Anticipate Lynn Peabody should be joining us shortly. And so let's turn to the first item on the agenda, second item on the agenda, which is to approve the minutes from the prior meeting. Diane, thank you again for the preparation for those and distribution. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes of the July 25th meeting?
yes.
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 Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Open it up to any discussion.
Nope, there was just one correction. There was under item 7, paragraph 2, third line, there was a said board which will be presented. There was a B missing,
Okay.
so we've corrected that.
Hawkeye caught that? Thank you, Tony. Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor of accepting the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next order of business is employee issues. Diane, I'll turn to you with Chief Lucy's absence here, so nothing you're aware of?
Nothing that I'm aware of.
Nothing at town hall, okay. Personnel actions and job vacancies. I know that there was some trailing conversation about potentially upcoming changes in the PD relative to either new or existing positions that are being tweaked. Can you speak to that, Diane?
Yep. So we will need to schedule what I think will be a brief classification hearing, a subcommittee meeting. There were some changes made to the shellfish constable position in terms of it going from an hourly position to a salaried department head. And it will also have one additional change where we'll oversee the assistant harbor master that will provide coverage when the shellfish constable can't be out on the water. So it should be a relatively quick review of that position, not a lot of change.
Okay. And that sits within the PD these days?
Yeah, all three of these positions sit with the PD.
Okay, thank you.
So the second would be, of course, the assistant harbor master under the PD, who will also be directed to monitor and document activity on the Newbury Clam Flats at the direction of the Newbury Shellfish Constable. So that's been added as well, just as a one additional responsibility. So whether we have to do a full classification of each of these positions, or if it will just be looking at what area that would affect and how it would affect the rating, we can determine that.
Okay.
And then the last position, originally I thought there were 4, but it's actually 3 positions. The third position is both the full-time and part-time emergency communications officers, the dispatchers, if you will. They are now going to be referred to as emergency communications dispatcher as opposed to officer. There was I think there was an issue with it being referenced as an officer position, so they're changing that. And then there's also, so there's a change in the title, and then there will also be an adjustment based on the hours of work. Because as it stands right now, those positions, I think we now have close to 5 what will be known as the EC dispatchers.
Right.
And a lot of them are working second shift, third shift, so there would be not what we refer to as a shift differential, because that's covered under the collective bargaining agreement, but it would be a rate adjustment for working a different shift. So that would be added into the job description as well. So these are tweaks to, small tweaks within each one, but
so we're not rating any new positions there?
No, they're just tweaks to the existing that would add responsibilities and change sort of the compensation, if you will.
Okay.
So we need to schedule that. I can't imagine that the 3 would take more than an hour. I think we could get through those.
Right. Okay. And in all likelihood, it would be Chief Lucy sitting with us?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Great. Any thoughts or suggestions on that? Depending on availability, as always, we'll have to see who's
I'll
who's
be
available when, so,
And once we schedule it, these are all prepared, they're all ready to go. They're redlined, so I can send out the redline versions once we determine
Okay.
who will be sitting with us and,
so perhaps given that, suggest perhaps we engage Chief Lucy in looking at his calendar. You know, given his schedule, maybe it'll be easier for him to go back to us and say, you know, here are the 4, 5, 6 times I'm available over the next couple of weeks. You know, Wednesday morning, Friday after, whatever it might be. And
Okay.
then we'll make sure that we get a quorum of select board members available, hopefully one of those at one of those times. And kind of, I think that might be the easiest way to do it is, rather than us figure out our collective individual schedules and see what the chief's, he may be on vacation, you know, who knows, so.
yeah, I can throw out some suggested dates based on my conversation with him, and then if people
Yeah.
want to respond, we can see what works and maybe land on a date that works
Great.
for everyone. Are mornings or afternoons better? No, just on the day.
For me, it makes no difference, depends on
Okay.
the day.
So I will get that email out tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and we'll want to check with Lynn on that, because if she ends up becoming a member of the subcommittee, you know, her schedule may be more restrictive than ours maybe, is my guess. I'm not sure if she's working virtually, if she's at Anna Jake's every day in her new role, but in any event, we'll get that figured out. So start with Chief Lucy,
Okay,
see what his availability is over the next couple of weeks, and then
We
we
need
can work
4.
backwards from there.
we need 4, right?
We need 4.
Okay,
Yeah.
and Patty,
4 for quorum.
assuming Patty is voted in tomorrow night, she probably would not sit on that.
Right.
I think that would be a conflict.
A little, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I will talk to John, and then I will put out an email with some potential dates, and then if people could just respond, then we could land on,
Great.
hopefully land on a date.
Great, and we'll work towards a quorum and get the meeting scheduled. And I would agree with Diane, doesn't sound like any of these 3 are gonna require an awful lot of detailed time, so chances are within 45 to 60 minutes, we'll be able to get all 3 rated. So, great, thank you.
Okay.
Diane, anything else happening, either at Town Hall or DPW or library relative to personnel actions or job vacancies or?
No, I think I reported that the labor position was filled. He started on August 8th, and I think that was it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anything else?
Anything relative to workplace situations, ethics, discrimination, anything in that broad category to report?
No.
Okay, nothing's hit my desk. Safety issues?
No change to protocols, everything's status quo. Nothing that I know of.
Good, okay, thank you. The new space, by the way, downstairs is
Stunning.
open?
I just got a walkthrough by Cindy, remarkable.
Yep.
And just, what an uptick. My goodness,
No question,
the
yeah.
upgrade is amazing.
Room to maneuver.
Yes.
Yep, great, thank you. Okay, number 7, other business, let's cover those in the order in which they appear. Organizational chart update. Diane was kind enough to pull a meeting together. Diane, myself, Lynn, Tracy, and
Matt
Matt Cooper.
Cooper,
Cooper,
our
yeah,
IT
the
director.
IT director. And so we had an opportunity to bat around a bunch of different issues, and I think what we've settled on so far is that the org chart, as it will appear on the website, will be clean, you know, strictly the org chart, the reporting structure, chain of command, and anyone either within town, any of the town employees or anyone from the public can go to that org chart, click on HR board, click on FinCom, click on PD, and what will appear is a hyperlink to that department. We were batting around the option of having a secondary page when you clicked on it, talking about the duties and responsibilities, the functionality of each department, each board, each committee. And then what we came to is a determination that that would be a duplication, because when you hyperlink to that department, you're going to get virtually the same information. So let's save a step. So the hyperlink will take that individual, whoever it may be, to that board, that committee, or that department. And then what we will do is ask Tracy to speak to her department managers in their meeting coming up in September, to try to create more consistency from department to department, board to board, committee, as to how people describe what they do. Obviously, the descriptions will all be different, but try to have some consistency in formatting so that anyone curious about what a department is responsible for will click on that hyperlink and it'll come up with, these are the things we do, or some verbiage like that. Plain English. These are the things we're responsible for. All right? And the other thing we talked about is that if you look at the website now, there's a wide range of mission statements, goals, or lack thereof in some cases. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what we decided to do was create sort of an overarching mission statement for the town, and then each department, board, or committee doesn't necessarily have to have a mission statement of its own. A lot of them are redundant. A lot of them, again, there are none. So let me just turn to Diane. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there might be a few, boards and committees that maybe want, under what we do, to still have some sort of not a mission statement, but, I relatively thinking about our board, may want to refer to the bylaws, et cetera, and that kind of thing. But when we first started with the website several years ago, and we really updated the town's website in general, we thought every department should have a mission about what their purpose is and what we found when we started looking at it was the mission statement really was general. It was overreaching, and we just felt that it was, you land on the page and everybody's mission statement, it's, if you're going to the treasurer's page to pay a bill, you really don't want to read the mission statement. You just want to know, what does the treasurer do? How do I get to where? We're really looking at ease of functionality and cleaning it up, because there were some other things I think that we just felt were a little cumbersome. So yes, creating a mission statement for the town in general, and then really looking at what is it that the treasurer's office does, what is it that the assessor's office does, and have some general guidelines within the content,
Right.
Just for ease of use. And we started looking at some others, and really that's what we saw as being a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more streamlined. There's also, if you look at the website, on every single page of every department, there's a news box. And really what it is, it's a duplication of the news as it appears on the very home page of the website.
Right.
And what we felt was, do we really need to know that we're flushing hydrants if you're trying to go to the assessor's page, because it's already back on the home page? So what we're hoping to do with Matt's help is to look at that news box that's on everyone's page, and that would be maybe a place where we would, put something more pertinent that's happening, like for example, treasurer's office, your third quarter tax bills have been issued, or assessor's office, abatement applications are now being accepted through, February 1st or something like that.
Right.
So really just trying to clean it up, streamline it, and make it more user-friendly. And the good news is that we did see a couple of prototypes where he showed us through the software that we've acquired. So we know that this is moving forward. We have the software. We've got, a couple of these items that we want to start to move forward with the idea that we're going to have some benchmarks so we can get the project done.
Right.
So
Right.
I thought it was a productive meeting.
It was a
Sounds
productive
good.
meeting, yeah, and the new software, and with Matt's help, will allow department managers to have access to the page. And, one of the things we talked about is the fact that some department managers may be more comfortable with, more technical with the use of the software, and Matt assured us that, for instance, what we said to Matt is perhaps at the next managers meeting coming up in the next month, he can, Tracy can give him 10 minutes and he can do a quick tutorial for all the department managers about, this is how you can maneuver around your page on the website. And as Diane said, we'll clean up the corners of each page so that they're not filled with things that aren't really relevant to that particular department, or they're not that current. And each department manager will have the opportunity, either individually or with Matt, to work on things that are time sensitive, that are, focused on what that department or committee is doing. So it's a good first step. Diane said that she had I think the template available from years ago to be given to the department managers, a formatted page saying, these are the things we would like you to update on your, on your page on the website.
We did this exercise a few years ago, if
Yeah.
you remember, in an attempt to have everyone update their own page twice a year.
Yeah.
And it's really gone by the wayside,
Right.
and this is, it's good, we're
We can resurrect
moving,
it.
yeah, we're moving it forward, so I think I still have the template. So really what we want people to do is take down the mission statement, and really, just look at what is it that their department does, and maybe have, just.
Right. And that's what, if you remember from a number of months ago, that's how this conversation started. If a member of the public, checked into a page, how cumbersome was it? Or how easy should it be for that individual to find out, okay, who's responsible for these bills? Who do I talk to if I've got a question about dog license, about shellfish, whatever it might be. So,
And-
Tony?
But my comment was about our mission statement, the Human Resources
Right.
Board, functions. I thought that was extremely well done, and
We may not lose that.
what?
Yeah, the
We
boards,
may not lose that.
I hope we don't.
I think boards may be different,
Yeah.
there may be some relative functionality of that
Mm.
mission statement for boards, because some of them are charged through the bylaws or
Yeah.
Mass General Law.
Mm.
So, and we understand that this is gonna be a work in progress.
And also, the fact, to your point, Tony, that, there's nothing special about the HR board, but at the same time, I think we need to recognize that the function of the HR board is probably as misunderstood in town as any. People understand what the FinCom does, they understand what Conservation Committee does.
I don't know if I understand completely what the FinCom does, but anyway.
But, when it comes to the HR board, people mistakenly assume that we're the HR department for the town. I see it all the time in social media that,
But those entities with whom we coordinate,
Yeah.
we put those in there.
Yeah.
Again, I say
Yeah, I
that's
think-
very, very well done.
I take great pride in that mission statement.
it took us a couple of reps to get it right. So, in any event, so
Yeah.
we'll make that determination as we go along, so thank you for that. I don't know, I think that's it for the organizational chart update.
Yeah, I think, the question was, well, if everyone sort of knows how to poke around and get to the department, why do we need the organizational chart? But really, the organizational chart was a directive so that someone could see how all the departments sort of interface with one another and what the hierarchy level is. And if I'm applying for, say, a building permit, how does the building office interface? Where does it structurally sit within zoning or conservation? So, we think there's gonna be, if you look at the website, I think there's a how to find it fast button. Right next to that is where we're anticipating it saying org chart. You click on that and it would bring up really the hierarchy structure, and it's how the departments work together and who sits where, and so we I think that's.
Is there a universal search mechanism so that if somebody doesn't have the capability to search through departments, can put a word up,
Yep.
title 4?
Yes.
That's always
And it'll
existed,
take
yeah.
them directly to title 4.
Yep.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think
keyword
the
search.
categories of that kind of search has to be looked at in the sense of it's good to know, it's must know, it is not necessary to know, kinds of things. You talk about different like the FinCom or planning board or whatever. It's again from the user perspective, and who's the user, the public as well as any other boards, I guess. But not all information is ready, willing, and able to be without a doubt we got to have it, kind of a thing. So it's good to know,
Yeah.
but it's necessary to know if you're going to, for example,
Right.
Submit a building request, building permit request, or whatever. So.
So that was the only thing that I wanted to add.
Right. What's that?
What's that?
Thank you. Next order of business, board member resignation, letter of interest. Chief Lucy has, as we know, has submitted his letter of resignation to the HR board. I believe that is on the agenda tomorrow for the select board meeting, as is interest from any individual who would like to join the board. And to the best of my knowledge, at least as of today's Monday, I think I asked Julie O'Brien on Thursday afternoon, I think I called her, asking if, other than Patty Fisher, if anyone, either an employee of the town or any resident of the town, had expressed any interest in volunteering in this board. And at that point, the answer was no. I don't imagine it's changed since then, but in any event, we'll know that tomorrow. To the best of our knowledge, Patty Fisher is the only one who has submitted a letter to the select board indicating her interest in joining the HR board. Patty's planning on, I believe, being at the select board meeting tomorrow. We would certainly hope and anticipate that the select board will vote her in for a term on the HR board as a volunteer. And if that's the case, we look forward to her joining us for the September meeting. Patty's indicated that if in fact the select board votes her in, tomorrow she will be here at Town Hall Wednesday morning being sworn in, Town Clerk's office. At that point, she's officially a member, so that if we're communicating for any reasons between now and our September meeting, she would be CC'd on the list. Okay. Personnel policy language. This is regarding ethics, compliance, conflict of interest training, and open meeting law training that we started to talk about. And as I committed to, I did have an opportunity to talk to Tracy about this at some length, and at that point Tracy reached out to Town Council, Lisa Mead, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here, which we are. And so here's the issue at hand. When we went through the personnel policy updating a few months ago, which I know we're all proud of, it was a yeoman's effort. One of the things that I think we missed, and which was caught subsequent, is the fact that, let me pull it up here real quick, I've got it saved. In the personnel policy, chapter 11, code of conduct, under paragraph B, conflicts, I think it may be on page 33.
I love that index.
I'll read it quickly here. All employees of the town of Newbury shall be aware of and abide by the state's conflict of interest law that is designed to ensure that a public employee's private financial interests and relationships do not conflict with their public obligation to act objectively and with integrity. The law is broadly written to prevent a public employee from becoming involved in a situation that could result in an actual conflict or give the appearance of a conflict. And this is the important piece. The town clerk shall distribute a summary of the conflict of interest law in paper or electronic form to all covered employees who shall acknowledge receipt. Failure to abide by this code of ethics may result in disciplinary action up to including termination of employment. So
We added annual last time, receipt annually.
right. But what we forgot was that, in fact, this is a three-part process every year. It's not only conflict of interest training, it's also ethics training, which is separate and apart.
Right.
I mean, ethics training includes some COI material in it, but technically they're separate modules. And there's also a third one, which is open meeting law. And as a practice in the town of Newbury, and I think we would agree as a good practice, and hopefully a practice we will continue, is that every year employees and board and committee members are given all three to review. Annually, it's the conflict of interest training and the open meeting law training. Every 2 years is the online ethics training. The only thing that our personnel policy speaks to here is the COI. Well, if you look at Mass General Law 268A, which we did with Lisa's help, we realized that Mass General Law speaks to the Code of Ethics training as a requirement, not COI. We, in the town of Newbury, speak to COI and not ethics. And so I think we have a couple things to figure out here, or to do. One is, and we're not sure if this is if this is select board's jurisdiction or if this is town administrator's jurisdiction. Either way, the HR board is advisory. It's not under our jurisdiction. But the question is, as a matter of best practices, should the town of Newbury continue to distribute and require all employees to conduct all 3 trainings? The conflict of interest annually, the open meeting law annually, and the ethics training every 2 years. Should it be a best practice in the town of Newbury that all 3 are done? And if so, we then need to change this language one more time to include all 3. A secondary issue is the matter of special employees, but I think we'll hold on that for now and get through this part of it. So let me just open this up to conversation or discussion.
I mean, it would seem that you could frame a sentence that would speak, shall acknowledge receipt annually, and by adding open meeting law behind code of ethics, comma, open meeting law, maybe, and then and biannually, ethics,
Right.
period, and new sentence, failure to abide, etc. Just it seems.
Right. But before we get to the language, I would just like us to discuss the appropriateness of this request. Again, we're going to take this, or we'll bring this to Tracy and the select board as an advisory suggestion from the HR board. My question is, are we in agreement that all 3, regardless of what Mass General Law says, that Mass General Law may only require ethics training? For years, we've done the other 2. I'm not sure even where they came from years ago, whose decision that was. Individually, I think it's a good practice that the town have its employees or its board and committee members educate themselves annually on all 3, or annually on 2, and every other year on the 3rd, and that we should continue this practice. And so I think as a board, at some point we should vote on whether we feel it's appropriate to continue this best practice, and then we can get to the language.
Well, who's the author of the triune versus just following the state's conflict of interest?
Say that again?
The triad of all 3,
Right.
conflict, ethics, and open meeting.
Right.
Who's the author of us invigorating ours over the states?
When you say who's the author, I'm not sure what you
Well,
mean.
how is it the town of Newbury,
Asking for all 3?
asking for all 3 when it says here, abide by the state's conflict of interest law,
Right.
failure to, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. And
So-
even that language should not be conflict of interest, it should be ethics.
Ethics,
Because
exactly.
it's the ethics that the Mass General Law requires.
And
So to answer your question, John, I'm not sure how long the practice has been going on that all 3 have been distributed every year. It seems like it's been a number of years.
Yeah, I didn't realize that we were having a discussion about the appropriateness of the documents. I thought we were having a discussion about how it would be reflected in the personnel policy. Because the way that I understand it is that the conflict of interest law is distributed every year.
Yep.
She is, please find attached, this is the conflict of interest law.
Yep.
She sends it out every year.
Right.
Every 2 years,
So, let me just stop you. But are employees required to acknowledge receipt of that?
yes.
Okay.
Every 2 years, you have to complete the ethics training,
Right.
where you have to submit the document, the certificate of completion.
Right.
And then the open meeting law, as I understand it, is distributed when a new board member comes on, they need to be aware of what the open meeting law is. And then I also think she attaches that when she does her annual distribution of the conflict of interest law.
Right. And that also has to be acknowledged and received of as well.
That I don't know. But I didn't realize we were discussing the appropriateness of what we were asking for. I thought we were talking about more how it would be reflected in here. Because we've been providing those documents for as long as I can remember.
But the Mass General Law that requires that ethics training, that's a very, very specific requirement of the state.
Right.
Right.
So we don't
can't-
have any ability to say, well, we don't think we're gonna do
Yeah.
that this year, kind of a thing. So we know that's mandated, and the other two, you know, certainly not saying that they're not important or whatever, but you're talking about having a policy saying that we're going beyond Mass General Law, we're gonna require 2 additional areas.
Well, it has been the established
Yeah.
practice in Newbury for a number of years
Right.
that all 3 are distributed. My only point is, if in fact that's the case, then all 3 should be included in the personnel policy. And then stepping back and say, well, that's fine, but we should just make sure everybody's on the same page. I think at this point, everyone has just assumed that all 3 are a requirement, when in fact just 1 is by state statute. And so to your point, Dana, I just feel it's cleaner if we just have a conversation. I mean, look, if for some reason town administration or the select board is not in favor of making all 3 part of the requirements, then that's a conversation we should have.
Well, what was Tracy's conversation with Lisa when she reached out to her about this?
As I said to you on the phone, I'm not exactly sure all the things that they talked about. All I know is that Lisa sent to Tracy and she forwarded to me Mass General Law 268A, Section 28, which only speaks to the every other year ethics training. So I don't know what other questions Tracy asked her about the appropriateness of the other 2. Should we continue this practice, or is there some reason that we shouldn't be doing it in the town? Now, that's a possibility. So the bottom line is we'd like to get this onto the select board's agenda for their September meeting, which is a month from now, which would give us plenty of time for us to double back with Tracy, make sure we understand what she and town council have talked about, and just make sure everybody's on the same page.
Did town council come up with any suggestions about these other 2 areas?
Not as yet. The only thing we've seen is her forwarding 268A to us, which speaks to the ethics training, which we already knew.
Right.
So we're not sure whether she's recommending that we maintain the existing practice or not. Tracy may have posed that question, I haven't seen it. So we'll have ample time to get those questions answered. My point is, today, I think we should decide as an HR board, do we think it's a good, just in an advisory, again, we have no jurisdiction here, just as in an advisory capacity, do we as a board believe that the town's current practice of distributing all 3 is a good thing? And if so, that we would then recommend to town administration and or the select board that we continue this practice, and if we do, if they agree, then we need to change the language of this to include all 3 in the personnel policy.
Describe to me your comment about ethics being more appropriate language in sentence 1, state conflict of interest. You think it should read state ethics?
Yes, because it's the Ethics Commission that distributes that online, or has available that online course. And it includes elements of conflict of interest, but it's the ethics training that chapter 268 refers to, not conflict of interest.
So then number 2 would be open meeting law, and what would be number 3?
Number one would be ethics every other year.
Yeah.
Number 2 would be conflict of interest annually.
Okay.
And number 3 would be open meeting annually.
So
when maybe this will help, I don't know. When we talked about this, when it first came up, when we started looking at this and the question was raised, well, I think the question came up, who is a covered employee? That's what started this.
Yes.
And, that's a whole other discussion, because there is a list of special municipal employees that needs to be updated, and so that's a whole other discussion. But what I had written as a note when we discussed this the first go-around was that the language would read something to the effect of, the town, assuming we were going to continue with all 3.
Right.
The town clerk shall distribute a summary of the conflict of interest law and open meeting law in paper or electronic form to all covered employees who shall acknowledge receipt. In addition, covered employees must biannually complete ethics training and submit the certificate of completion to the town clerk.
Right.
Because that is the process. She distributes, she distributes the conflict of interest law and the open meeting law, and then every other year, she also sends us out the directive to complete the ethics training. So
Right.
that was what I had written when we
Right. Two
first.
sentences as opposed to one, which is what you were trying to do, John. Right.
So,
Yeah.
the town clerk shall distribute a summary of the conflict of interest law and open meeting law in paper or electronic form to all covered employees who shall acknowledge receipt.
Right.
In addition, covered employees must biannually complete the ethics training, and we can put in the specific name of the ethics training or, and submit a certificate of completion to the town clerk.
Right.
That was the language.
Yep.
I can unequivocally say that I think we should continue with all three.
I agree.
I'm not saying discontinue anything, but I think that it's the scope of the presentation, like the conflict of interest, you're not going to go through a 36-page tome on the conflict. You're looking at a summary of the law. You're probably looking at, I don't know, maybe 1 or 1.5 page summary, and the same thing with the open meeting law. You can reduce it to that, where they're sent out and the employee acknowledges receipt. He's not acknowledged, she is not acknowledging total understanding, and I can give, of course, myself kind of a thing. Yeah, I have it, and when the issue arises, et cetera,
The town has a document that says they were given the information.
That's it.
Right.
But I'm not.
That's the most important piece of it.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. But the ethics training is, has to be
Right.
much more extensive.
Right, and that's the online.
So like a one-page or two-page summary, a little précis with the high points.
Yeah.
The important points of it, I think is the way to go, but to keep them all.
Right, right. So the question in front of us today is, as a board, are we prepared to vote on the appropriateness of all three as a continuing practice, as a best practice in town? That's the question, right?
As long
Well, the
as-
one is required by state, the other two are.
As long as it's our role to be just voting on that. I don't, again, I think
We're just voting to advise that's all.
Okay, to John's point though,
Yeah.
we might be voting on something that's out of our purview in terms of our responsibility. It could lie with the town administrator.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So I just
Yeah,
want to make that
understand,
point.
this vote does not make anything official. All we're voting on is whether we, as a board, are recommending to whoever has the jurisdiction, whether it's Tracy or the select board, that we continue this existing practice of having receipt from all three, 2 annually, 1 biannually.
Okay, so are you looking for a motion?
Or is it more appropriate for us to, before we presume to be those who recommend such, ask Tracy, what's the history, what's the downstream, and are we involved at all other than enforcement downstream? The element that you worry about is that we as a group of 4 or 5 or 6 are making a judgment that we feel it's appropriate when it's really up to others to make that judgment call. I'm not sure it's our purview.
Well, we act, like maybe to Mark's point, we are the advisory.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are the body that for better or worse, that these matters come to, and even though we don't have jurisdiction over this, we can't suggest that based on all we know today, we think it's a good practice, and we would recommend the town continue it and make it more official and more formal. If it turns out that town council or some other entity says, well, there's some danger associated with doing that, or well then you step back. But the reason I think it's important to get this vote tonight is that we're not scheduled to meet again until the day before their next meeting in September, and if that's the case, we won't have an opportunity to get this our piece of this onto their agenda for that evening, which moves it to October.
Perhaps our recommendation should be that we agree on the point that the additional 2 from the state mandate should be examined as opposed to be the right thing to do. Rather than be, I mean, my sense is that it's hard to be anything but equivocal. And the element here would be our advisory role is that we feel as a board that you should consider this, as opposed to we feel that it is appropriate that these 3 be mandated. I think we're stepping one step too far to say we should mandate, we agree that these should be mandated. How about we just say that we think they should be thoughtfully considered?
Or continued as a best.
Or continued as a best practice.
Okay.
Or it should be considered that they be continued. That's not being, equivocation is not what I'm suggesting, but it's hard to be anything but equivocal regarding being the directors as opposed to the advisors.
Okay.
If I'm making sense.
Well, on the Human Resources Board, in the Personnel Policy Manual, it's the mission of the Town of Newbury's Human Resources Board is to assist the town administration, town departments, and the select board in their efforts to recruit, develop, motivate, and retain a diverse workforce capable of providing the highest quality of service to the town. So that
I wrote those very same words
I love it.
3.5 years ago.
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Are you looking for a motion?
All right, so given that,
Well,
try to clean that up and make it a motion?
Yep.
I'll make a motion.
Yep.
Is there a motion on the table?
I make a motion
Okay.
that we continue, or I make a motion that we recommend the continuance of the best practice of the conflict of interest law distribution and open meeting law distribution, and the completion of biannually of the ethics training, and document such requirements in section B of chapter 11 of the Personnel Policy Manual.
Well said. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'll remember it.
Thank you, Diane.
Well done.
Thank you, John. Well taken. You know, we don't want to get out over our skis, as they say, but I think it is a best practice that we should continue, unless for some reason town council or someone else suggests that even though we've been doing it, it's not a good idea to put it in writing, which I can't imagine would be the case, but who knows?
Yeah.
Could be a reason. So, and again, I think it's been happening for a number of years. I don't remember when it started. As long as I can remember,
As long as
all
I can
3 have been
remember.
distributed. So, it's a best practice. So, whose decision it was in the first place? I don't recall it coming out of this board, but I may be wrong there. Okay, that covers our other business. Before we get to next meeting scheduling, is there anything else anyone would like to discuss? Seeing no conversation, our next meeting would be scheduled for Monday, September the 26th at 4 p.m. Is that a good date for everyone?
September 26th. Fine with me.
I suspect it's fine with me as well. I do have a tentative trip to the West Coast, but I'm not sure that it's going to happen.
Okay, well, as you've been kind enough to do in the past, just keep us informed if that's the case. Hopefully we'll still have a quorum available, so.
Yeah, I'll let you know well in advance. I'll make that date in the next 2 weeks.
Monday, September the 26th at 4 p.m. it is.
Will do.
And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn. Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.